I recognise the member for Etobicoke Lakeshore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to speak to the motion brought forward by the member of Parkdale-High Park, and I would like to start by acknowledging the member for their commitment to reducing and eliminating intimate partner violence in Ontario. I grew up as a child of the 70s and 80s, seeing women's activists and the feminist movement advocate for reproductive rights, workplace equality, the political representation of women, and ending violence against women. And it's been inspiring to live through this transformation where societal structures kept women marginalized. And yet, in recent years, I have grown concerned to see the erosion of protections that the women before me have fought so hard to secure. And Speaker, we have not seen the progress on ending violence against women that we would have hoped for. The motion confronts truths that thousands of women's organizations, frontline workers and survivors have been sounding the alarm bells for decades. First, we cannot talk about violence against women without talking about job security. We cannot talk about preventing femicide without talking about childcare, housing and social services. And we cannot talk about choice or leaving unless we talk about whether the victim can afford to survive. If we're serious about preventing violence and femicide against women, then we must be serious about strengthening the systems that allow women to live in safety, participate in the labour market, and leave when they want or need to. Last week, I attended Aura Freedom's international public installation on intimate partner violence at City Hall. At the flag raising and the ceremony, I heard from Councillor Lily Cheng, who shared an anecdote that really stuck with me, Speaker. She shared that there were 20,000 incidents of intimate partner violence in Toronto that the police responded to. The good news is that we know that now, because we started collecting the data. But what was interesting is that in that same year, there were 12,000 cars stolen. And we all know which story got more headlines. When violence against women reaches levels nearly twice as high, it is met with apathy and silence. Cars receive more attention than abused women. This should actually outrage every one of us. Gender-based violence is not only a crisis of safety, it is a crisis shaped by economic and social inequality, public policy, and government choices. Given the well-documented health, social, and financial consequences of intimate partner violence, it should concern every member of this House that nearly all women who have experienced IPV face barriers in accessing health care, housing, childcare, and other social supports. Speaker, this is the reality. Speaker, every indicator on gender-based violence tells the same story. Every 48 hours in Canada, a woman is killed, most often by a man she shares a home with. In September alone, in the last year, we've seen Ontario record 43 femicides. In rural, remote, and northern communities where social services are scarce, women face intimate partner violence at a rate that is 75% higher than it is for urban women. And in 2022, the Financial Accountability Office estimated that over 37,000 women were turned away from shelters. Shelters are over capacity, and women are sleeping in cars, in unsafe homes, or returning to their abusers because actually there's nowhere safer to go. And we know that financial abuse is one of the primary barriers preventing women from leaving violent relationships. Femicide, though, is not just about women being subject to violence. The kind of violence that we see, it is also having a huge impact for children in those families. Many times, children live in homes fearful of being abused or are worried for their parent, and it was heartbreaking to hear the stories of mums and kids living months in shelters, coping with the situation. And we heard from many stakeholders yesterday on this issue that it's these same children that often come back seeking help for themselves, or the young boys growing into young men, some repeating the behaviors. And there's so much to do upstream on this issue. And we need to do it all together. And we need to be proactive about both the moms and children's experiencing violence. Speaker, nothing about this violence is exceptional or rare. This violence plays out every day to all types of women and all the time, and this violence is preventable. but only if we confront its root causes, and one of the strongest predictors of whether a woman can escape violence is her financial independence. Economic insecurity traps women in violence. Strengthening women's economic power is violence prevention. Speaker, the evidence is overwhelming. From the Canadian Centre for Women's Empowerment, 86% of victim survivors were pressured or coerced to quit work by their abuser. That's a familiar story, isn't it? 93% were denied access to their own money, had paychecks taken, or had financial aid stolen. These facts paint a clear picture, and it's frankly very easy to understand. If a woman cannot afford rent, she cannot leave her abuser. If a woman cannot access childcare, she cannot leave her children to go to work. And if her income is unstable, she'll be unable to secure housing after leaving. And if the community support isn't available, she has nowhere to turn. So economic insecurity is not isolated from violence, and it's one of the driving engines of intimate partner violence. Madam Speaker, having strong social infrastructure is also critical to building women's safety. No childcare or underfunded childcare means that women are unable to participate in the labour market, improve their education, their overall socioeconomic status, or ultimately leave violent homes without risking homelessness or poverty. The Auditor General's report revealed that of the 86,000 new childcare spaces that were to be created by 2026 under the funding agreement with the province, there's only 36,000 spaces available at this time. Also, we need to talk about the $10.2 billion in federal funding this government received, and they spent it in 4 years instead of 5 and haven't achieved the promised targets. And we need to make this connection between how important it is to deliver on that program and this issue that we're talking about. It is clear from the Auditor General that our provincial childcare is only a piecemeal solution to systemic underfunding. The provincial government needs to take responsibility to implement the plan and stop the finger-pointing at the federal government and deliver on its targets. We talked about shelters. We know the situation in shelters. Again, I too wanted to acknowledge that there have been recent investments in shelter beds. There have been expansions. I heard about them yesterday as well, and we needed it, and I appreciate that. The length of stays, though, in shelters are also getting concerningly long, because what happens next for women and kids? Sharing rooms in a single room in a shelter for 10 to 12 months is far too common, and we need to get very proactive around supporting the kind of housing and community supports. Indigenous, racialized, and disabled women experience disproportionately higher rates of IPV. And they face language barriers, system navigation challenges, and culturally unsafe services. Chronic underfunding of culturally specific organizations leaves these women at even greater risk. This motion recognizes what frontline agencies have been sounding the alarm about for years. Violence of women and femicide thrives where governments underfund the very systems vulnerable women rely on to stay safe. In the interest of supporting women affected by intimate partner violence, it is critical as public servants that we support and work towards investing in social infrastructure. This would include that women would have childcare, housing, healthcare, mental health care, and community supports required to live safe. Strengthening women's economic security through stable work, decent wages, training opportunities, and targeted economic support, and improving the services that women need to count on in crisis. We even know that it is fiscally responsible to do this. Every dollar invested in violence prevention and women's economic security returns multiple dollars in reduced healthcare costs, the justice system costs, social services, and the labour market losses, Speaker. But most importantly, we know it sets a new path for women and children impacted by violence. Now, I did want to make a comment as a new member to this legislature. In the last few weeks, I learned all about the work of the IPV committee that was started. There was about 50 women. We know that there were 50 women who came forward with courage to share their experience in a closed session. There was 100 experts in the field that came forward with their knowledge, with their evidence and recommendations. These recommendations are research-backed, they're survivor-informed, and they're fiscally responsible to do. These, with all the other reports and coroner investigations, give us everything we need to accelerate our actions on this issue. We will support this motion because the content of what is being proposed is essential, and it must be advanced. But nonetheless, I have to say what I have witnessed is a disappointing display of partisanship on an issue that needs to put all of our stripes, our political stripes, down. I would ask that as the report is released on IPV, or here we are, with another motion, with another plan, that members in this House reflect on what are the actions and behaviours that are most likely to have the greatest impact and easily bring cross-party support. It's just too important of an issue to not produce a concrete plan and set some actions. The most compelling and powerful example I've seen, well, one of them, there's been a few, but this one came to light for me again, was a truly collaborative effort at a really important time. And this was the 2010 Select Committee on Mental Health and Addictions report. It had cross-party signatures from all parties, including the current and previous Minister of Health and deputy leaders, the current NDP critic for health who's here, who cited it recently, and many other parliamentarians that and including being championed by a Liberal minister. This, I heard it mentioned here in the legislature. I heard it mentioned at a board meeting last year at the hospital I used to work at, because it still grounds us in actions that we can all get behind. And this issue, deserves that exact same cross-party support. I'm anticipating this motion may not pass today, but I think what I'd like to see is a real commitment